Hello and welcome back to your next episode with me, Louise.
And me, Amy.
And we're delighted to have on again Jean-Claude Chalmet. Hello, JC.
Hello, good morning.
Hello. Jean-Claude is a globally renowned psychotherapist, an author, a featured columnist at The Times and founder of The Place Retreats in Bali, and we're at The Place London practice today. Now, we loved interviewing JC about parenting teens about 6 weeks ago, and it was the episode that everyone got in touch about, saying, it was so good, it was so useful, everyone was loving you, JC, and your knowledge and wisdom was absolutely recognised by everyone who listened. So if you're listening now and you missed that episode, do go back and listen. It's season 2, episode 5. And today we're going to discuss couples relationships around midlife. And it's a bit of a hackneyed cliche, the midlife crisis that leads to relationship breakdown. But like most cliches, it represents a common experience. And personally, I've noticed that 40s and 50s is a common time for separation or divorce, and also there can be a ripple effect as well. As friends split, others start to question their own relationships and whether they're happy in their relationships. And I'd like to start, JC, by you've obviously counselled many couples at your retreats and privately. What is it about this midlife time that causes issues, and what are the common problems that you see?
I believe that what we term the midlife crisis is actually a moment that happens for each one of us, whether you're a man or a woman. I think it comes a time when you just realize your own mortality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when that moment hits you, and for everybody it's at a different moment, it's not exactly at 39 and 350 days,
no,
or at 42 and 13 days. Everybody has their own moment. I think you start to think, is this what my life is about?
Yeah, and time's running out. It's like that last chance saloon feeling. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you around that time, you're going to realize that most probably you're not going to become a rock singer, or you're not going to become a professional football player, or you're not going to become the next supermodel, And so you have to come clean with yourself. What are you about? What are you willing to, out of that stage of your life, to get out of it? And I think there are some very, very poignant questions. And of course, some people will just go on existing in their lives. But for a lot of people, it's a wake-up call to start living.
And so in relationships, people are starting to question, is this what I want?
Is this the relationship for me?
Could there be better elsewhere, maybe?
Oh, not necessarily be better elsewhere. I think that what they are questioning is, okay, I've done the marriage, the engagement, the wedding, the kids, the school fees, all of that. And what next? Is this how I'm going to live my life? And again, for me, it's very much the question always, and I'm very strong about that with clients. What path are you going to choose in life? Are you going to exist, or are you going to live? And I think that for a lot of people, they were living in their 20s, and then as marriage and parenting came in, they've sort of gone on a treadmill of rather existing, and the midlife crisis is actually wanting to step out of that existing and living again. And of course, the most beautiful thing is when two people in a relationship decide that they're going to again try and live together, rather than exist together, and each one grinding off the other, and just being there. And for a lot of people, what happens is that one person wants to live and the other one is quite okay in the existence. And then it becomes really difficult, because how do you engage the other person to join you in living with you, and both having a way of understanding and committing to each other and accepting the growth and the evolving and being the other person's supporter in their growth and their change, while also going through your own, and doing that for each other.
So couples need to be on the same, not need to be, but sometimes is that the work sometimes is getting onto the same page where you're actually both
maybe not necessarily the same page, because you have different speeds, different goals, and so on, but it's understanding where the other person is and appreciating and respecting and deciding, you see, I think that a lot of couples suffer from something what I call codependency. They're all the time looking at each other, standing nose to nose, looking at each other, gauging the other one's reaction to whatever it is that they say, they do, where they move. And it becomes very codependent that you can't do without gauging the reaction all the time of the other person. Whereas I believe that a good relationship is a relationship that has interdependency, where if I can give you the image of, before I said in codependency, you stand with your noses to each other and you're observing each other all the time, what's happening, what is the other one doing, what is going to happen, how is it going to happen, that you would rather change that experience to standing back to back, holding hands, and together being able to see the whole world through your own eyes and also through the other person's
That's such a
eyes.
good visual.
But being connected.
And being connected.
Yeah.
Imagine if you stand back to back, that your hearts are actually touching. And then if you touch with your hands and you have the back of your heads, you have the three most important things of the body. And I think that's such a powerful image. If you can stand back to back, holding hands, and just walk, turning around, each one seeing through your own eyes and through the other's eyes, and sharing. Because it's not a question anymore after 20 years of marriage, are you still besotted with me? It's a question is, can you accept me for who I am, for the goals that I have, for the things that I want to do, for the growth that I want to achieve, for the path that I'm on? And also, very importantly, am I doing the same for you? Are we connected in such a way that we can sustain each other's growth, each other's evolvement, each other's unfolding, which is where you see people really having very strong bonds beyond 40, beyond 50, and beyond 60, because you appreciate who the other person is, and each one of you can live with the other very easily.
I love that imagery, because when you are nose to nose, every eye roll, it becomes, you get on that loop, don't you? That loop of communication where you're triggered by, sorry, did you just look away when I was talking that? Not you, I'm doing like I'm actually giving you a little insight into my kitchen in the evening when I say something. And actually I'm picking up, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to be offended.
And I think you've mentioned something very important there. It's, can I communicate with you? Can I show you my vulnerability? Can I show you my weakness? Can I actually express that? And can I look at you for comfort? Can I look at you for supporting me, of saying, oh, no, sweetheart, no, darling, sorry, I was thinking about the football, I'm really sorry about that. But just expressing to the other person, also you're vulnerable, maybe you were looking away and you were thinking of something else. But one of the exercises that we do very often with couples is that we make them sit opposite each other. And one party has to express what they want to say or how they feel about something. And the other party is not allowed to say anything at all. They just have to sit there and listen. And then we ask the other part of the couple to repeat what they have heard. And it is an absolute amazing exercise, because most of the time they have heard something completely different. Because in their heads, they're already preparing themselves to answer what the other person has said, rather than listen. So it's a whole re-education. Are you actually hearing your partner? Are you actually understanding what they are talking about? And we repeat this exercise until they have really understood what is happening, what is the wife or the husband saying, and what have they understood. And until that matches, it can sometimes happen that we have to repeat 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So imagine in a busy life at home, when the conversation flows and they've picked up maybe 10% of what is being said.
Presumably that is something that couples would need to practice.
No, they don't.
They don't need to practice.
No, because if you think about it, when they first got to know each other, they were hanging off each other's every word. So they don't have to learn.
No.
What they have to do is to transform them or transfer themselves back into that space where every word the other person said mattered, and how attuned they were. And it was through that they really were connected. And you can't, once you have unopened the box, you can't pretend that you don't know what's in it. So you have experienced it. So it's a question, do you want to go back to that? What made you so happy all these years ago, but you've sort of forgotten through the grind of daily life?
Yeah.
Because what was once endearing and a real turn on it actually becomes quite irritating after years. But maybe, you do need to just thread back and say, what layers were piled on top of us to have made that happen?
Absolutely. And I think through daily life, and because we don't talk about what upsets us or what hurts us or what has the resentments we carry, and we just keep going and going and going, but each time we put on another layer of separation, another layer of creating distance between couples. And I always ask couples, are you capable of going beyond your anger, going beyond your hurt to see the other person? Because for as long as you can't go beyond the hurt, you can't do anything, because people are really stuck in their hurt. And it's very necessary, if you're working with couples, whether there has been an affair or whether there has been whatever that has happened between a couple, can we reconnect them? Is the willingness there to work with each other and to see that both couples, I'm going to make a slight parenthesis here, that if you are in a relationship with someone that has a personality disorder or is a sociopath or a psychopath that is emotionally abusing you and gaslighting you, it's a very different situation from a normal couple where you're not hearing each other. The division of 50-50 or 60-40 does not apply.
No. So we have reached out to everybody on sort of social media who follows this podcast, and we have got a few questions. So would it be okay if I started with one? So obviously all names, ages and places, it's completely anonymous. So if you do, if anything is triggering you as you're listening to this, please do just reach out and get in touch with us. All the links are on the notes. My partner had an affair. I found out they ended it. We want to stay together, but it's so hard to let go of feelings of betrayal, hurt and anger, and I feel like I can't trust my partner ever again.
Well, my first question would always be in that, can we acknowledge what has happened between the two of you? What was each of your contribution in that? And if you have decided that you want to be together, do you want to be together as the angry, resentful partner? Is that how you see being together? Because if you can't go beyond the hurt that you are feeling, then there is nothing even the best therapist in the world can do. If you're going to decide to be together with someone, which I think is a very brave step to take, there are two things that are very important. You need to go beyond those feelings of resentment and anger and betrayal and hurt. But the partner who had the affair must also accept that most probably for the next 2 or 3 years, he or she is going to be very much under the microscope. And it demands total honesty and transparency. And, trust is something that can regrow, but it's going to take time.
You can't just stay in there as the, let's call it, injured party, the person who has not been unfaithful.
Unless you enjoy the victim role.
That's what I was going to say. Unless you're going to hold that, you're going to make them pay for that every day. Like that.
Is that the relationship you want to have?
Exactly. The energy needed. But I think some people are, especially if it's very public, obviously, like you say, most of these relations involve children. So there's other parents if the humiliation, I can imagine really fueling somebody to say, I will stay, but I'm just going to make sure that I make this person's life hell.
But again, I always question, when, of course, we encounter this a lot in our practice, and I always question, is this the person you want to be?
Mm-hmm. And the answer is probably no. They don't want to carry on in that relationship feeling.
But they also find it very difficult to get out of it because, it's a wonderful shield to be able to hide your pain behind. And, as we said in the previous episode when we were talking about teenagers, it's again the same thing. It's a theme that will come back again and again, is that how do we express our hurt? Mm-hmm. It's either through anger, bitterness, resentment, and all these variations on the theme, or through anxiety, paranoia, and so on. So it's again the same thing. I always go back that if you want to have a couple that has any kind of situation where there was somebody else involved, there's a lot of hurt, and we have to deal with that pain. We have to be able to talk about it. We have to be able to process it, because if that doesn't happen, you can't get anywhere.
And so really, for those couples, therapy, that has to happen. They're very unlikely to be able to
navigate that.
Yeah.
Continue,
It's virtually impossible.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, you need to have someone there that can actually call time out when it gets very, very heated. And I think that one of the beautiful things about couple therapy when you're dealing with situations between couples is that you can actually say, and we do that very often, we say, look, reserve the time where you have these very deep feelings for when you are here in the therapy room. And once you're outside the therapy room, try by telling yourself, I have an opportunity to express how I feel. I don't need to do it at home. I don't need to do it. I advise people to write it down, what happened, how they felt, and then bring it to the therapy room and discuss it here, so that your system knows I have an outlet for this.
Yes,
I don't need to swallow it, but it's safe.
It's safe and it's
Absolutely
guided by somebody that actually understands how to
and can
help
also
you to do
see
that.
the end goal and work towards that rather than stay in the moment of anger and resentment. And that also doesn't allow someone to walk out. It has happened that somebody wanted to walk out, and then we talk about it. And if they still want to do it, and then of course they can walk around the block and come back, but they have to come back and talk about it.
So that is, quite a long journey. But you were saying about the person who has had the affair, for example, has to accept that there is going to be a lot of distrust there and being under a lot of scrutiny.
And I always say the same thing to clients, which sort of makes them smile rather wryly. But I always say therapy is cheaper than divorce.
Yeah.
We were talking about this on the train. Somebody had said, like, well, 60 quid a week, I can't afford that. It's like, well, isn't that worth the investment to sort this out?
Therapy is cheaper than divorce.
Yeah, absolutely.
It always is.
Absolutely.
And also, what an amazing journey that you can discover about yourself and the person that you have been with, and how amazing it could be if you could reconnect and travel and look back and say, oh wow, that was a terrible thing to have happened to our relationship, but we've overcome it and we've become stronger through it.
As a result. Yes. And I would just like to point out to the listeners of the podcast right now, the value that we are bringing. Yes. I mean, this is free. This is free to listen to this, and maybe it's not your own situation, but somebody in your life that who's going through this, and it's
or it might set you thinking. And I think that's the most valuable thing of all when you listen to podcasts like this, is that, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, that's possible.
Okay, next question. I prefer my own company to my partner's nowadays. Oh, did I write this? Amy's overshare. I love him, but I prefer spending time doing my own thing than spending time with him.
She didn't actually write that.
No, I didn't.
I'm just going to say,
it's
in
just
case
relatable.
I think that's a very interesting concept, because as human beings, we are herd animals. And what has happened for you to want the person to be around, yet not have an emotional or physical, very often, connectivity with that person? What really happened? What does that hurt of yours contain to want to be removed from that person? What has been going on? And is it something that happened gradually? Was it one big event? And you can, listening to this, you can go back in yourself and say, where did this start?
Yeah, where did that disconnect
start? What
Yeah.
happened? And, as we talked about before, it could have been one big event, but it could have also been 1,000 little things. And then my question is always, why would you not talk to this person? Because you still want her or him around. Why would you not want to talk to that person? Why do you want to be in your loneliness? Whilst having it's a bit like an orphan with a family. It's sort of, do you want to be with this person, or do you just need somebody to fill your room or your bedroom, or, why wouldn't you want to reconnect to that person despite everything that has happened? Because you will grow from it too. It's not only the other person, and neither of you can be really happy or content.
I guess there's a difference between just enjoying your own company and having your own lives and maybe different interests. I guess you don't need to go to every art gallery together and every concert together and have the same tastes in films or whatever. But even by the virtue that somebody has written this in, they perhaps see it on a very, very subconscious level as being a problem, being a disconnect.
I think the question to ask here is, what is for you so fearful that you cannot share any intimacy anymore with that other person that you still have in your house? There's something very serious that has happened there.
But could it also be that this person is just actually expecting that they should be wanting to spend more time with? Maybe it's fine. Maybe they just actually enjoy their own company. Or do you think if people are feeling...
It could be, but I think that's in a very small percentage.
Yeah, right,
cases.
I see. Yeah, okay.
I think that for me, when I hear this, most of the time I can sort of feel the resentment crackling in the air, and you see that for us, it's very easy to see. You see a couple, they come in and they go and sit on opposite sides of the room. And you go, okay, that's interesting. So I'm the referee here. This is my role. So I need to side with one of you to say that who is right and who is wrong. And of course, you don't do that as a therapist. No. Nobody is right and nobody is wrong.
No.
So
that's really interesting that without even saying a word, you can set your stall out straight away through body language. And then I guess if somebody comes in and they sit really close to each other and they're holding hands, that's, like a different sign that they're giving you.
Absolutely. And but even when they are holding hands, very often we have to watch out, is this the show that they put on for the therapist? Because after 20 minutes,
after it comes down to they're in therapy, so there's an issue that needs addressing.
After 20 minutes, the sort of knives come out,
and the legs cross away from each other.
Yeah. And so but what is so beautiful, I mean, I always admire every couple that comes here,
of course,
and every couple that goes to therapy, because it's a very, very brave step to take. And for me, it always shows the commitment that you have, because otherwise you just step to the lawyer.
Okay, I'm going to move on with this next question. Okay, I'm bored with my relationship. My partner's let himself go, and I can't even be bothered to start a discussion about it. We have children, so I can't just walk away, although I would like to. I don't think I'll ever find him exciting again. Do I have to accept that excitement is something in the past?
No, but I do think that you have the duty to yourself and to your partner to tell them exactly how you feel. To give them a chance to do something about it. And if they don't, then you can feel for yourself that you have left no stone unturned and that you can walk away. I think that's so important. You need to let the other person know how you feel. Not for them to change, but it's very important for you to be able to say, this is how I feel. Then it's up to the other person. And if then they don't do anything, then that's it.
Yeah,
I've done everything that I can, but it's about not wanting to change the other person. It's about having the honesty for yourself to say, this is where I am. And I think that we all owe the person that we're in a relationship with, and especially if they are children. I think you should leave no stone unturned before you make that final move.
Decision. Yeah. I mean, the first sentence, I'm bored with my relationship, that person clearly must be bored with themselves, with their life, with the,
not necessarily. What happens is, what we see very often is that one partner in the relationship pulls all the weight.
Right.
And they are very tired.
Yeah.
And they express it as being bored. But what they really are is
exhausted
by
in
the
what way?
relationship.
But it pulls all the weight
physically, emotionally, and mentally.
Right, okay.
They are exhausted. So they are being asked to look after the children, cook, and very often it's the women, I have to admit that, but sometimes it happens that it is the husband, and the other party is sort of, I don't know, a bit like a teenager, that expects a hotel mama always to be open 24/7 and everything to be ready and done, and won't put in any effort. And so I think at that point, I can understand the person saying, but I think that they're not using the right terminology.
Yeah.
They're not bored. They're just really
Fed up.
exhausted.
Yeah.
And tired,
and they
yeah.
can't anymore. They have nothing to give anymore. And I think that's what the person is expressing. I'm tired. I'm so tired that I have nothing to give anymore. And in that case, I would say, look, for your own peace of mind, express to the other person. And you can do that verbally. You can do that through an email or through a letter that you have written. You don't necessarily need to confront the other person, but you can let them know. And then, first of all, you have externalized it. So it's not a vortex that goes on inside you that feeds itself.
Yeah.
And you have said it to the other person. And if there's no change, then you have absolutely made the right decision that you're going to remove yourself from such a situation, because eventually you're just going to collapse.
I think sometimes that first question is such a scary question to ask, isn't it? Are you happy? Are you okay? Are you all right? It's difficult to even start that conversation because the scariness of what that answer could be, which could lead to, essentially, it could lead to anything. Like you were saying before, it could lead to therapy, which could lead to a better, deeper connection and a bounce back from this staleness that has happened. But the other fork in the road is that it could end in you parting ways and divorcing. And I think sometimes people, they do just put up with the status quo, even though it is clearly dragging them down, probably making them ill.
But when I listen to your scenario that you described there, I find it always very interesting, because we see so often that someone just walks out and just leaves. And that means that they have suffered all their pain, and leaving
Silently,
is closing the circle and just going. And I think, why suffer so much in silence? Why can't you? There is a problem there that you can't say how you feel. Because
why is that? Because actually it's something you see a lot. I see loads of people my age in relationships where they're not happy, and one will talk about, one of them will talk about it to their friends. And it's just and it's just like, well, it's just the way he is or she is.
That I find extraordinary, that you can talk about it to a stranger, but you can't talk about it in. So what is your fear? What do you think is going to happen if you believe?
I know.
If you believe that the other person will not hear you and will not listen to you and will not do anything, then get the absolute proof for yourself, because then you can actually say, I've tried.
Yes,
and
right. Yeah.
I can't anymore.
And do you think it comes down to personalities? Because I'm somebody, if I'm upset, everybody knows about it. So Paul was saying about how that's, like a little bit irritating. He said, what did you say? You never want just to let things go. So, but I think that's quite I would never be one of those people that just quietly...
Then my question would be, how does your other half react?
He listens, and he...
Okay,
and we have those conversations.
You have learned to accept each other's way. You don't want the other person to be a clone of yourself.
No.
But what you have done is that he knows that you react in that way, and you know that how he reacts in that way, and you don't want to change the other person.
No.
You have learned to accept and to value what each of you bring to the relationship. And therefore, I think that's a very successful thing to do. That, I mean, I'm sure that your husband knows that, oh my God, she's going to go off and what? And you're going to sit there and go, well, he's most probably not even going to bat an eyelid. But at the same time, that doesn't matter.
No.
What you do know is that he will listen to what you are saying. And he knows that if he doesn't say anything, that you will take note of that. Okay?
Yeah.
And so that's where the understanding and the cohesion and the exchange happens. You don't want him to also start screaming and shouting, if he's upset. So I think it's that, we all are different people, and it's how we accept the other person.
Let me ask you this last one. Now that our children have left home, I realise I have nothing in common with my partner.
That's a great realization to make, but I would suggest that you try, first of all, to find things that you could have in common. It could be walking, it could be bicycling, it could be doing charity work. And you don't need to do everything together, but find one or two common points between each other that you can share time and get to know each other again. Because for both of you, it's a very frightening time. It's not only for women as such, but it's also for men. Because, through the years, what you have become is a functioning couple that does solution-focused
co-parenting.
Yeah. That's it. And so what did you expect that once the raison d'etre of your couple has fallen away, what did you think was going to happen?
If, let's say, in a situation like that, maybe 10, 12 years, is it ever too late to reconnect?
Never. But you have to have two people
who
are willing,
to at least explore, because we never know the result.
No.
We don't know the result. And, that's what people are afraid of when you start scratching the varnish. What are you going to find underneath? Is it going to be gold, or is it going to be something quite different?
Tin. Big rusty biscuit tin.
And so I think that's very important, that you go into this adventure, but at least you're doing something. Because too many people are content with the status quo or stasis. And they pretend that they are content with it, but they're actually very unhappy in it.
And I suppose you've both got to take some sort of wanting to sort things out and an effort from each member of that couple.
Well, if you can complain so much to your friends, there's definitely something that you want to change.
Yeah.
Because who...
Maybe that's just become your shtick, though. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
People have
that's how you deal with it.
Yes, that's how you're processing it.
But I'm always saying to people, imagine if you could put all that effort that you do in complaining into a positive way forward.
Yeah.
It's the same energy. You just have to you have to just change the direction of that energy, because it's so draining when you are so negative and so unhappy and so unfulfilled. And it becomes a negative vortex inside you. And in the end, you don't even want to get up in the morning anymore.
Yeah.
But
I was just thinking again about some people that I know who are sort of in their mid-50s. And I guess if you've seen your own parents do just that, they're bickering, they're doing the same thing they love each other. Obviously, they're still with each other. They're retired and they're in their 80s. It
doesn't mean that they love each other. It might be that they are too afraid of being alone.
I was going to say, sorry, that whole, mum and dad still love each other, as in granny and granddad love each other very much. That's the party line, isn't it? But it's not. It's just, it wasn't a done thing to get divorced after the kids had left home 40 years ago. So you are almost repeating that generational cycle.
Very often I ask myself at funerals, when I see people crying so much, what are they crying for? Are they really crying about the other person, or are they crying about the loss of habits? And what are they going to do now that they don't have these habits anymore? And then this is a very harsh statement, but it is also very, very true. And I think, if you have seen in your own parents how they were just sort of sticking together,
just coasting
decades, along, didn't you say to yourself when you were younger, I will never be like that. This is not how I see my life. So why would you repeat it? Be true to yourself. You said that 25 years ago. Now do it.
Can I just, something else that occurred to me, this isn't a question from anyone, this is just my question, which is, as human beings, are we actually designed to, are we meant to mate for life? Or is it just we're so varied? Some of us are, some of us aren't.
As always, everything is possible. But what I do believe, where the biggest problem lies in relationships, and I see that especially with young people, is that they are expecting the other person to provide 100% of everything that they need. And that's not possible.
No.
Nobody can do that. If you have 70, 75%, you're very lucky.
Yeah.
And, you
need other people, don't you?
You need other people. You can discuss Kierkegaard with your friends. You don't need that to be able to discuss that with your partner. And, we have to accept that your partner will have shortcomings, but so do you. And you have to be willing to see those too. And I think that the question is the real question that you're asking me, are we made for monogamy?
Yes, that's probably what I'm asking you. Yes, are we?
And I don't know.
No.
I think that depends on each person.
Yeah.
And I think, again, these are questions that we never ask before we start a relationship with someone, whilst we're having a relationship with them, when we get married. what happens? What do we do? Because, it doesn't need to be only the man or only the woman. On both sides, there was this long-held belief that women don't need or want sex as much as men. Hello?
Yeah.
Which century were you born? It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't women be as sexually interested as men are? And so the thing is that if you are not going to fulfill that need for your partner, male or female, then obviously people are going to look outside the relationship. And let's talk about that. Because maybe you have a lower libido. Does that mean that the other person needs to be frustrated for the next 20 years in the relationship? How do you deal with that? Let's talk about it. Let's deal with, there's this wonderful book of love story, where people, walk away in the sunset holding hands and love each other forever. But that's not real life, isn't it? It's a love story. And I think, sex is such a taboo subject that people don't discuss in relationships, even amongst partners that have sex together, that it's incredible to think that we think about it so often, but we are not able to talk about it. Why do people, have to have this erroneous belief that when you have sex, both of you have to have an orgasm at the same time? I mean, hello?
Yeah.
Which planet do we live on? I mean, it's of course wonderful if it happens, but if it doesn't, there's nothing wrong.
No.
Why, does one can have an orgasm one day and another one can have an orgasm the other day? What is wrong with saying, actually, tonight I don't feel like it?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
No,
but it's
communication again, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that is what is so important. Where did we become so afraid of telling the other person how we felt? Within the beginning, when we were seeing each other, we couldn't wait to tell everything we were feeling.
Yeah.
And we couldn't wait to hear that. So it's a two-way thing, like you say.
Absolutely, you're
and
absolutely
I think
right.
Also, that thing of you were saying before about the expectation. If your expectation is here and my hand is placed here, and then the reality of that gap is where that's
and also
the disappointment, isn't it?
To come back to what we discussed previously, is your partner emotionally even capable of holding you?
Yeah.
Is your partner, if you're going to ask a 9-year-old to sit an entrance exam to Oxbridge, you wouldn't be surprised if they failed the exam.
Yeah.
And you certainly wouldn't, give them hell for it if they failed. The same thing, if you have someone that is of an emotional age different to their intellectual or their physical age, what are they supposed to do? So let's talk about these things.
Yeah.
And let's not shame or blame
Yeah.
people, because that's what so often happens in relationships. We are so ready to shame or blame the other person for expressing how they feel. And this is a great sadness always to me when I hear this in couples. You said this, you did that, this is how you... No, we are all here together. We are trying to make sense of things. There is no point in shaming or blaming the other person because it's not going to help you. I always ask people, tell us how you feel. What is it that you would want to say that you cannot say at home, that you cannot say, that you feel is... And it really helps people to create that space, where they could actually say, this is how I feel. This is what's going on for me. This is what really gets to me. And once they've said it, it's amazing that it also loses the power in terms of the resentment and the anger, because it has actually been said.
Because it's been said. Yeah. Okay, so for people sitting at home and listening and just starting to maybe realise and have a little bit of a think, this is giving them stuff to think about, is there anything that you can, any recommended reading or anything that you can direct people to?
Well, when people contact me, in order to, couples contact me to come and see me, very often I will ask them to read a book first, which is called Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson. And in it, she has 7 very, very important conversations, which I think are conversations that each couple needs to have. And they have beautiful names, and you will recognize what they mean. Okay. The first conversation that should be had is recognizing the demon dialogues. And I think that is, the conversations that keep on coming back and haunting every relationship. You did that. You called this person. You did that. Why did you go there? And it just keeps coming back, and we can never get over it. Then finding the raw spots. What is really triggering you in the relationship? What is it that the other person does that really makes you feel very hurt? Which you express in a variety of ways. And then once we started working together, I think it's very important that we revisit rocky moments, because at that moment you can work through a very painful moment, and you can actually process it and let it go. And then the beauty out of that is that there's something as the name of the book, which is called Hold Me Tight, Engaging and Connecting, where you start to listen to the other person, you start to recognize. And sometimes, for men it's very difficult, because we are very solution-focused, problem-solving beings. And for women it's a very different thing. They want to be heard, they want to be listened to, they want to be understood. And so it's learning how to connect and engage with someone. And then the next stage, which the book talks about, is forgiving injuries, which is so important, because you have to be able to forgive the other person for whatever it is that has happened, because otherwise you just can't move on.
No.
And then the next stage, which is a very beautiful stage if you get to that, is bonding through touch and sex. Whereas, for us, the previous conversation are sort of the bricks of the house. Sex is, for me, the mortar that goes in between the bricks to make it solidify. And then, of course, the last part of the conversations are keeping your love alive. And once you have rebuilt that, how do you not fall back into the same trap? So that's my recommendation always.
Okay.
Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson. It's a good start. There are many books out there, and there are many very good books out there. But that's my personal favorite choice.
Okay. Can I just go back to very quickly that final bit about keeping that love alive? And I'm assuming, obviously reading the book would be the best thing to do, but I'm assuming that would come back to keeping that communication going all the time.
There are three golden rules in a good relationship.
Oh, great. What are those?
Communication, communication,
Oh,
communication.
Marvellous, brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much, JC, for answering questions for us again. All of JC's details are in the show notes for this episode, and I'll put details for that book in there as well. And don't forget to go back to listen to his episode a few weeks ago to get a great understanding of parenting teens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Okay.
Made by darkhorse digital.co.uk. Shooting, live streaming and podcast